Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome to our July edition of Deep Dive with DUI. We are streaming this live on Facebook at this time also, if you're not with us on Zoom. If you are watching us on Zoom, it's best to be watching this in the speaker view. Please use the chat window on either Facebook or Zoom and post any questions that you have throughout the presentation. We will answer those. We'll have like an open question and answer session at the end of this, and we can go through some of those. So with that, I'd like to introduce today's speakers. We actually have two today. So it's a little different format than what I've been doing. So I'm going to ask to add them to the spotlight. Just give me a second, more than one to go at a time. So here we are. So first I'd like to introduce Jim Ritterhoff. He's going to be our main presenter today. That's going to go over the 100 Yards of Hope project. He is the executive director and co-founder of Forest Blue. He's been still working as a professional writer for the past 25 years. And this is interesting. I always find it interesting when people are creative people. Jim's penned and directed award-winning advertising campaigns, screenplays, teleplays, and documentaries. And he's the co-founder and creative director of an advertising firm called Chowder Inc. or Incorporated. So with that, he wrote a movie and produced a movie. That's awesome. I looked at the trailer. Of course, it has to do with some scuba diving in there, and obviously something to help save or have an environmental message. And a children's book that looks pretty cool. I'm just going to quickly share a photo of that. I'm going to switch over here, and just so everyone can see this, I think it's kind of cool. I got it somewhere. So there we go. He wrote a book called Tuke the Specialist Turtle, which is awesome, considering we did have the World Turtle Day not too long ago. But that's looks like an interesting story with some good photos. Anyways. I thought it was interesting. My daughter may be too old for that now, but she may still appreciate the art. Or the story. So Jim's an avid scuba diver and lifelong environmentalist. He's previously served as the board of directors of the Central Caribbean Marine Institute. That's a mouthful. Was recently named the 2019 Sea Hero of the Year by Scuba Diving Magazine and the Seiko Watch Corporation for his work with Forest Blue. And our co-presenter today is a retired SEAL Master Chief. He is also the co-founder of Forest Blue. And his name is Gonzo. I just don't want to mess that up. So, and apparently the East Coast Gonzo.
Yes, sir. Yes,
So this is awesome. So welcome both of you guys. So I am honored to have you guys here. I mean, anyone that, first of all, has served in the military, I appreciate everything you guys have done. And of course, now with all the work for saving the environment, for keeping places for myself, my kids, maybe, whoever in the future, that we have a great place to enjoy the oceans. So with that, Jim, I'm going to pass this over to you. And this is now your show for however you want to go.
All right. Well, thanks, Jack. Very appreciative of this opportunity, and thank everybody at DUI and everybody who's attending. We love the opportunity to talk about Forest Blue. It's important, that we get the message out. And today to share with you a little bit about our 100 Yards of Hope project that we just wrapped up. So the way this is going to run, so everybody understands, is we're going to do a very short presentation that's going to include a couple videos. Going to start with some background about Forest Blue so that you understand our organization. And then we're going to jump into talking about, as I said, 100 Yards of Hope, which was a 2-year-long coral reef restoration project that we did in association with the NFL, some very big brands that are NFL sponsors down in Florida between the two Super Bowls, Super Bowl 54 in Miami and Super Bowl 55 in Tampa. And then when we wrap up, I'm going to turn it over to Gonzo toward the end of the presentation, just to talk to you a little bit about what it means from a veteran's perspective to be involved with Force Blue. So if you have questions, as Jack said, please, you can put them in chat. We're going to try to wrap up our presentation within 30 minutes so that we'll have a full 30 minutes to just do what we do best, which is talk and share our thoughts with you guys in a more informal way. So with that,
No.
Oh.
I want to interrupt you here for real quickly because I do want to ask the question before you get started with this presentation.
Yeah.
So Gonzo, just be warned that I'm going to ask you the same thing before you start talking.
Yes, sir.
So we love scuba diving. We love the ocean. So what is it that got you so passionate about scuba diving, or what is it that just, makes you want to get in the water and dive, and, or who got you going with this? I mean, what is it that, how did you get here?
Well, I mean, I'll go first. I mean, Gonzo's probably has to do with very cold water. Actually, mine does too, but in a little bit more hostile, probably setting than mine. But I started diving. It's hard to believe now, but I started diving in 1986. I was a graduate student in journalism up at Syracuse University in New York. Very cold place, and there's not a lot to do up there in the winter. So my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, whose father was a British sub-aqua scuba instructor, cajoled me into going to take scuba classes in Syracuse, New York. Well, I walked into a dive shop on Erie Boulevard in Syracuse. If anybody's ever been to Syracuse, kind of a main drag. And a guy named Jer Hollenbeck, who's actually pretty well known in the dive industry, as it turns out. He was on the Etosha and I guess it was NASDS back then, was the certifying agency. I walked into his dive shop, and the first thing I saw was a ceiling to floor giant poster of him mixing martinis at depth. He had a special contraction he had put together. And I said, that's the sport for me. So that was my introduction. That's how and 2 weeks later, I had all the gear and was in training. So that's my story. Gonzo?
You never know.
Yeah.
So, as a SEAL, you go through buds right there in Coronado. Nice warm weather, nice warm water. Not, but you start off open circuit in the pool, and then you do closed circuit, with the Draeger, diving in the Coronado Bay. And then I was East Coast, as you had mentioned. So then we dove over here from Virginia Beach, Puerto Rico, the Caribbean, into Europe and other places. So the majority of my diving, until I became a member of Force Blue, was military diving, diving on a Draeger, flying at about 20 feet, literally just looking down at my attack board, with my compass, my depth gauge and my watch, and just doing my legs, hitting the target and then extracting. So 4-hour dives sound pretty cool until you're on a 4-hour dive. So especially in cold water. So, but then, I came on board with Force Blue for the 100 Yards of Hope project. And the very first time that I dove open circuit for recreation was on that initial dive that I did with Force Blue.
Wow.
So that was pretty transcending to go from this to taking it all in, and really kind of shifting. And I don't want to, PTSD is too strong of a word, but just the shifting of the mindset of military combat diving to, all right, let me enjoy, let me take it all in. Let me just really appreciate the marine environment. And as Jim said, when he was hooked, that was it for me. I knew I was Force Blue all the way after that. And I've thoroughly enjoyed the projects that we've done so far. And it's also enjoyable for me doing such a long time in the military to see other veterans enjoy it as well. And you see that aha moment when they when they dive in and they're like, oh man, this is just amazing. So that's what's enjoyable for me as well.
Wow, that's cool. I would have thought that you would have during that time gone and done some sort of fun dive at some point in time.
We were just so busy. I was pre 9/11, so I was in the SEAL teams before 9/11, and then once 9/11 hit, we were so busy that you were just either deployed or preparing to deploy. So just a little too busy. But now that I'm retired, I'm able to enjoy it and truly enjoy it. So,
well, welcome to the fun side of scuba diving.
Thank you very much.
And actually being able to see things that are out and about and the colors.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so thanks for sharing, guys. I mean, that's great. I mean, I love hearing these stories. It makes it, we know who you are, where you come from. This is great. So Jim, back to you.
All right, so I'm gonna share my screen here with everyone, and hopefully everybody can see this. If you can't, please let me know. Okay, so I'm going to start. This is a presentation. I have to explain this a little bit. This is a presentation we gave about a month after the Super Bowl to NOAA, to a large group from the Coral Conservation Program at NOAA. So I figured we needed a title that was really complicated and scientific sounding. So ostensibly the name of this presentation is Creation, Collaboration, and Communication Redefined for a Hyper-Partisan Political World. But the real name of the presentation, and it's not coincidental that it's the same name of all our presentations that we give at Force Blue, is One Team, One Fight. And that's more than just a slogan for us. It's really a mantra. And hopefully you'll come to understand why as we go through the presentation. But so to start with a little background, because people are probably asking, well, what is Force Blue exactly?
Did you want to make that full screen since you're not doing sharing the portion?
Oh, sure. Sorry. I thought it was.
No, you have to do the share portion if you want. You can just hit the.
I'll just hit full screen.
Okay.
There you go. I can come out when I need to for the videos. So what is Force Blue? Well, the elevator pitch is pretty simple. We are the only 501c3 nonprofit organization in the world that retrains and redeploys former special operations veterans like Gonzo and military trained combat divers to work along scientists and environmentalists on marine conservation missions. We are not any branch specific. We have veterans who represent the Navy, like Gonzo, Navy SEALs. We have Recon Marines. We have Air Force Pararescuemen, Army Special Forces. We even have a British Royal Marine and a British Special Boat Service veteran as part of our team. But really, to tell you about what Force Blue truly is, I'd much prefer to just show you a real quick 3-minute video that we created that is actually in the words of some of our veterans themselves. So if you bear with me for 1 second, I will show you that. Oop, if I can get it.
Established in 2016, Force Blue is giving military veterans a new mission and a new fight. Here is that fight in their words.
I did my duty, and I did what I did for the United States Marine Corps to be no better friend, no worse enemy, and to fight for those who can't fight for themselves. I lost some of my brothers doing this. I want to come home, become part of a solution of humanity, not a seed of destruction.
His extraordinary efforts under direct, immediate danger to his own life resulted in saving 4 American lives, 1 host nation civilian, and returning 4 soldiers killed in action to their families.
To have men die in your arms, it's a very horrible thing to attempt to shoulder that responsibility and fail them. You can't help but implicate yourself in that death.
When you see their wives and you see their kids, I mean, what do you say? The only thing you can say is at least they were doing what they wanted to do for something that they believed in and loved when they got killed. They believed in something bigger, better, and wanted to make a change.
Post-traumatic stress is viewed as some sort of a mental illness, a breaking of the mental processes of the spirit. And really it isn't, you know, these are still the same guys. They're just carrying some pretty awful things which haven't been processed.
Anybody experiences the horrors of combat, I think it forces them at some point to change. We're so strong and we're so resilient, but we're the last to ask for help. We take it out on the people that we love. It's just a horrible thing. We have to gain perspective to heal ourselves from that. I mean, we are a mess in the way of how many insults we have of traumas. We've just become cynical to it.
It's like, what do I do now? What do you do with a used up hero?
By retraining and redeploying these warriors on missions to preserve and restore our environment, Force Blue is repurposing their skills for the good of the planet and the betterment of themselves.
They want a mission. They want to move forward with something and be able to find a new way of channeling all that hardship into something that can benefit them.
I just can't imagine the sacrifice that these guys have had to go through repeatedly. And then to be humbled by the fact that they were so excited to learn about the ocean and how to preserve it and how they could be a part of it given what they've gone through.
The reason you can get past all of the crazy things that happen isn't because you're this super battle-hardened ninja. It's because you have a team there and you're pushing forward because that's what you do. Just driving towards one thing, which is mission, you can get past everything until you don't have a mission.
They were amazing. It was so awesome to work with people that clearly have insane experience underwater, know what they're doing, are driven by purpose.
To be in meaningful groups where I can provide community, develop that sense of continued growth and development beyond our experiences, that has tremendous value.
I got special people in my life that believe in me, and I am believing in myself. It really is one team, one fight. We're fighting for something innocent and something that needs protection, and that's the ocean. I'm not done serving. I don't know if there's such a thing.
Okay, so again, Force Blue in the words of our veterans. Since we began in 2016, you know, we've deployed over a dozen times on everything from you know, hurricane intervention work in Puerto Rico and Florida to green sea turtle rescue and survey. But with the one project that we're going to share with you today, as I mentioned up front, hang on one second. Sorry. Is a project called 100 Yards of Hope, which was a 2-year coral reef restoration effort. What it was, going back to that idea of creation, collaboration, and communication. 100 Yards of Hope, well, it is, because it's a growing entity, a large-scale coral reef restoration project located just offshore in Key Biscayne. It's in very shallow water, 17 to 18 feet, and is a site that even the divers and even snorkelers can visit. It began in 2019, really as a photo op. The NFL came to us and the Miami Super Bowl host committee and said, it's the NFL's 100th season, the Super Bowl's in Miami, so we'd like to do something symbolic to give back to the environment. So they tasked us with planning 100 pieces of coral in honor of the 100th anniversary and Super Bowl 54, which we did. Then that year at the Super Bowl, we actually went back to the NFL and said that was great, but we could do something much bigger and more significant. So we expanded the project to 100 Yards of Hope, which is an entire football field size restoration, really an ecosystem level restoration project. The NFL agreed, and because there was a very unique situation where the Super Bowl was moving from Miami to Tampa. Very seldom is there 2 Super Bowls in the same state back-to-back years, but there was. They saw this as the connective tissue between the 2 cities and the 2 Super Bowls. In fact, it was just kind of coincidence that about 90% of the coral that we were out planning over in Miami was actually coming from the Florida Aquarium, which is in Tampa. So it was this very natural link between the two Super Bowls. The site currently, and it's doing very well, we monitor it just about every month, now consists of over 1,250 branching and boulder corals, thousands, tens of thousands actually, of coral larvae, and hundreds of diadema that were just put down actually in April. And the biggest news and success of this to date is that the site actually spawned last fall, and we expect it to do so again. So I think we have something like a 95% survivor rate to this to date, which is very extraordinary. And really, it just means we picked the right spot, and the corals that we used are thriving. Collaboration, I think this is the real kind of untold story of Forest Blue. It's what we like to say, is kind of our convening power, the partners we were able to bring together. Back in 2019, when it was just, let's put down 100 pieces of coral, we had some pretty high-powered scientific partners. We had the University of Miami's Rosenstiel School, their Rescue Reef program, the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, and the Philip and Patricia Frost Museum of Science in Miami all helped in that initial outplanning. But by the project's end, the enormity of the job and also of the awareness we were raising, we were able to include to that list, Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, the Florida Aquarium, and Sea Corps International. From a private public sector partner standpoint, and this is really important because we're talking about organizations that had never been involved in any kind of marine conservation before. But again, we started in 2019 with NFL Green, which is the NFL sustainability arm, and the Miami Super Bowl host committee. And then we had a company like Verizon, who helped fund the initial outplanting. First time they'd ever done anything in the realm of coral reef conservation. PADI and another nonprofit organization called greatergood.org. By project's end, we had added, of course, the Tampa Super Bowl host committee. We received a substantial grant from the NOAA Coral Reef Conservation Program to actually make a documentary about the project, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Now we jumped on board. And then we had companies like Pepsi, Castrol, Oikos, Yogurts, Innovation Brands, which is a big wine importer, and Step Change Clothing, which actually makes our sun shirts, our stuff. I'm sorry, yeah, rash guards. That's the word I was looking for. Out of recycled bottles, came on board. So you're seeing a lot of different types of organizations getting involved in this big effort, which really was the whole point. Communications, because it doesn't matter, as I was saying to Jack earlier, our story is great and it's compelling, but it doesn't matter if people don't hear it. So we do, it's why we spend so much time documenting everything we do. To date, 100 Yards of Hope has generated over 100 local and national news stories, including a 4-minute feature on NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt that actually aired the Saturday before Super Bowl 55. This is kind of a statistic we're very proud of. It comes from sort of the marketing world, but it's important to our private sector partners. Is in basically a 2-week period alone, we garnered almost $4 million in earned media just during NFL Green Week and Super Bowl week, that 2-week period prior to the Super Bowl, which is pretty extraordinary for a very small investment of their marketing budgets. And enough content, again, I referenced this earlier, to build a 45-minute documentary that actually premiered at the NFL draft in Cleveland in April. So you had the story of a coral reef in Florida being shown to, I think COVID notwithstanding, there was something like 100,000 people went through Cleveland during the NFL draft who were all exposed to the documentary. So what are the key takeaways? What has this project taught us? Well, it's that, you know, we like to say opposites attract. I mean, one of the other mantras of Force Blue is that we don't care if you get on board from the right side or the left side. You know, we're all in the same boat in this fight to save our marine environment, right? So we have scientists from a very different background than SEALs like Gonzo who partner and really become even more than just, you know, business partners. It's become very much of a family in the way we approach these projects. So people who you might think have nothing in common have found a commonality around the work that we do. I mentioned our convening power earlier, but it's really this idea of service, of continued service, not just for our veterans who Force Blue was built to sort of help in their transition back to civilian life by giving them that sense of mission, of purpose, and of something greater than themselves, but to the scientists and to the corporate sponsors and the government officials who are involved with us. There's something very attractive about this idea of service. And there's also part and parcel with that, I think, a longing for belonging. People right now are desperate for something positive to belong to. We've all seen kind of the horrific effects of negative belonging. You know, when you look at, you know, what happened in our Capitol on January 6th, or, you know, we're not a political organization in any way, shape, or form, but we do want to provide a sense of belonging where people can come around and find commonality in this fight to save something that really isn't political, which is our oceans and our marine habitats. And lastly, and this is something, it didn't come just from this project, but it's something that our 4 years of operation have sort of instilled in, I think, in me certainly, and in our organization. And it's something I actually gave a presentation on at DEMA 2 years ago. It's this idea that in some sense, recreational diving is over, right? If you have the ability to enjoy the underwater world as I imagine you all do, or you wouldn't be on this call. If you have the ability, the training, the love of the underwater world, then you have the responsibility to protect it and to get involved in this fight. The days of just kind of diving and having a good time and look around, yeah, that's great, but there's work to be done and we need all hands on deck. And the last thing that I included in here before I turn it over to Gons is this actually just came across my email earlier in the week. It's a link to 9 organizations that are focused on coral reef restoration around the world. So if you're asking, well, how can I get involved in helping to restore a reef? This is a great start. You know, all of these organizations will take experienced divers. You don't have to be a veteran. You don't have to be you know, crazy scientist, you know, coral scientists to do it. They'll take you and they'll get you involved in restoring reefs. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Master Chief Steve Gonzalez to just give you a little bit of a veteran's perspective on why this is so important.
Thanks, Jim. So, yeah, so please feel free to call me Gonzo. Like I said, my real name is Steve Gonzalez. I did 34 years total, 30 active. I did 4 years in the reserves. Over 20 of that was as a SEAL. I served time in the regular military. When I first went in 1982, there were no books, no movies, you know, nothing about SEALs. So I didn't know anything about it. And then some guys came on my ship. They didn't look like us. They didn't act like us. They sure didn't dress like us. And I said, who are those guys? And they said, well, those are SEALs. And I was like, what the heck's a SEAL? So I went and talked with them, and I knew instantly that that's the job for me. So I was a little bit older when I went through. I was in my early 30s when I went through BUDS, which is I had to get a waiver, an age waiver actually, and made it through. And then went out, served on the East Coast the rest of my career. Multiple deployments to Afghanistan, Iraq, Africa, Central South America, you name it. So as I'm getting ready to retire, so okay, what am I going to do now? And along comes Force Blue. I knew that I didn't want to go down the usual path of contracting or continuing to stay in the special operations field. So I was kind of looking for a new purpose. that's what Force Blue allows me to do. I say this quite often that I have a 17-year-old daughter. She knows very little of what I did in the military by design because of the nature of my job. So my legacy within the SEAL teams, she knows a little bit about. But now she sees my legacy about caring for our planet. And I hope that with her generation, they can see it and they can say, you know what, this is something that I want to be a part of. So that's my legacy there, I think, is showing her and her generation that, hey, we only have one planet, so we better take care of it. And Force Blue allows me to do that. So for, again, I mentioned in the beginning, this was transcending. This is the first time I'd ever dove and witnessed the marine environment as truly breathtaking as it is. As we would outplant this coral, you'd go to get another piece of coral, and by the time you went back to plant that one, marine life was there. Fish were coming in and literally starting to pick on the piece that you just planted. So it's pretty neat. You know, it's really neat. And then of course, as you're swimming to and from the dive site, seeing everything that's there, everything from small fish to small sharks, you name it. So it was quite wonderful, quite enjoying. So for the veteran perspective, I would venture to say that most veterans are called to serve our country because we want to serve our country. Force Blue allows us to continue to serve our country, just in a different manner, but just as important. So that's what with being a member of Force Blue and being involved with the 100 Yards of Hope, and then in our next projects, that's what it means to me. So as I like to say, with that, I'll shut my cake hole and I'll answer any questions that somebody might have.
All right, thanks, Guns. I just have, if everybody can still see that. Let me go back to my full screen mode, just real quick. Oh, we actually have one more I have to get out of this. I have one more, you know, I talked a little bit earlier about the NOAA grant that we got to tell the story of 100 Yards of Hope. And I'm going to share with you all a link where you can actually go see the film now for a very limited time. It's 45 minutes long. It's actually available on Florida's Coral Reef website. But I want to play for you now a trailer that hopefully inspires you to want to go see the film and explains what, you know, what's at stake with projects like 100 Yards of Hope. So I'm just going to play that real quick. Alrighty.
Our Florida's coral reef has seen dramatic declines to the point that our reefs are on the precipice of disappearing.
If you live in Nebraska, the middle of the country, how is coral reefs important to you? And we get that question all the time. Coral reefs are the breeding ground of a variety of species that live in the ocean. And if we don't protect the ocean, we won't have a world where we can breathe healthy air.
There's a lot of bad news when we talk about coral reefs, but there's also a lot of hope. Innovations and new tools and new ideas shine some light on the potential for us to restore these delicate reef systems.
We were really the first people to be able to predictably spawn corals in a biosecure facility, and we can do it in a way where they can be planted back out onto the reefs again. So how do we make restoration and outplanting really efficient?
Force Blue retrains and then redeploys former special operations veterans, all military trained combat divers, to work alongside environmentalists and marine scientists on ocean conservation missions.
It's a challenge for many veterans to go from that really defined sense of mission and then trying to figure out who you are and what you're supposed to do as a civilian.
I fell apart after the Iraq War. That darkness, that shadow, it started tearing me apart. The waters of life from Force Blue completely healed that.
The bulk of their underwater work had been in the dark, in kind of murky areas. They never looked around, and now they're getting back in the water, amazed at the biodiversity and how therapeutic it is to have a different mission.
Innovation happens when challenges present themselves. Big solutions require collaborative conservation. Everybody is coming together for 100 Yards of Hope.
By connecting this coral reef project to Super Bowl, we hope it will bring much wider attention to the plight of coral and to our oceans. 70% of people pay attention to sports, sports news, sports headlines. Only 15% of people pay attention to science.
We're at the restoration site, so we've arranged the plot to look like a football field. So each buddy group is actually going to take one of the yard lines to build the perimeter of the field.
Most of the things that I've done have been more on the demolition side, so this is pretty neat in the restoration side.
People that have experienced trauma and pain want to protect things that cannot protect themselves. We have to heal others or other things to heal ourselves.
While our time is dwindling, the fight's not over. Right now we have the world's attention. All eyes are on Florida. This really is ground zero. If there's anywhere to fight for their future, it's here.
Okay.
So you said there's a full version that people can watch for that?
Yeah, there is, and I'm gonna share that if I can real quick. Let me go back to the screen mode. So if anybody wants to go see that film in its entirety, again, it's about 45 minutes long. It's really worth it. It's you know, I'm a little biased, but I think it's a pretty compelling piece of content. It's at floridascoralreef.org/100 yards of hope. So you can go there and see it, like I said, for a limited time. I think it'll probably be up for most of the summer, but we do pull it down when we have some other public screenings they're going to in-person screenings that we're going to be hosting. And then also, you know, obviously, if you want to learn more about Force Blue, and we encourage everyone to, please visit our website. It's just www.forceblueteam.org. And with that, you have Gonzo and my sincere thanks, and we'll take any questions. Anyone?
I believe you're muted, Jack.
Yeah.
Way to go. Okay, now miming. Good at it.
It's nice of Marcelo to join us today.
Yeah, so I forget. Sometimes I use the microphone mute and not the Zoom one that warns you that I'm muted. Anyways, so the question is kind of like a two-part question that was posted. One was, I'm going to kind of go backwards on how I said this. So for all of you who could lip read what I was saying before, the first question kind of backwards from what I said before was, are you going to go back and do like a reassessment of like you said, the 95% were still viable and stuff like that? Do you have plans in going back with the scientific community to monitor that and see what the success rate is? And then are you going to have that as a, you know, make it bigger, better, whatever in the future? And then the other part of that question was, do you have any other projects that you are, you know, going to expand on? Maybe not with that one, but in other areas, with different organizations, different scientists, whatever. So
Yeah.
that's the first question.
Okay. So yeah. So the answer is yes, we do plan to go back to the 100 Yards of Hope site quite a lot, you know, throughout the remainder of this year and next year. The good news is our scientific partners, who are really the scientific leads, and that's a point we should make, is that we're not scientists. So every operation that we go on, every deployment, we partner with the subject matter experts and, you know, the best scientists we can get a hold of to go do that particular operation. In this case, it was the folks from the University of Miami. And this is literally in their backyard. So they're out there monitoring, I think almost every month, the site. our hope with some of our vets is to get back in. We're going to be doing, we're doing a series of summer coastal operations with Pepsi around the state of Florida this summer. We're going to be back in the Miami, Fort Lauderdale area in August. And there's plans for hopefully to get some of our team back on the site as well. But the monitoring continues. Do we want to expand it? Hell yeah. You know, we had a screening of the film actually about 3 weeks ago now in Miami. And, you know, I said to everybody who came out for it that, you know, why stop at 100 yards? You know, let's do 200 yards. Let's do 100 miles. You know, it's all, obviously it comes down to funding. It comes down to, you know, political willpower. But yeah, we would love to expand this project. I think the great thing about this project, and I alluded to it when we talked about those partnerships, is that we set a model for companies that have never been involved in funding marine conservation projects to get involved. And now, as we look toward the future and other restoration work, not just in Florida, but around the world, honestly, hopefully we've raised some interest in some places where there hadn't been before and being a part of that. In terms of other operations that we're going to go on, we're getting ready in about 10 days now to deploy down to the Florida Keys for 2 weeks on a green sea turtle rescue and survey operation. There's a disease called fibropapillomatosis. Took me about 2 years to be able to pronounce that. That is a real problem in the turtle population around the world, but it's particularly bad in Florida. It causes the turtles to get these massive tumors that occlude their eyes. They can't, you know, they can't see to hunt or to eat, and they can't avoid boats. So it's a real problem. We're going to be doing that with folks from In-Water Research, Loggerhead Marine Life, and Florida Atlantic University. We're in discussions to hopefully, possibly in September, August, I'm in Charleston, South Carolina, to be operating here and in Georgia on some dolphin survey work, which would be outstanding. And then, as I told you, Jack, the NFL's approached us with some of their sponsors about Super Bowl in Los Angeles this year, and possibly getting out to you all out there to do at the very least a harbor cleanup. You know, it happens to be the 50th anniversary this year of the NOAA's National Marine Sanctuary System. There are, I think the 15th just came online, but I think there are 15 national marine sanctuaries around the US that people don't even know about, right? And I think 4 of them are in California. And one of them is the Channel Islands, right? So a real problem out there is that there's kelp, invasive kelp, that goes out to the, you know, gets dragged out by boats to the Channel Islands, to the marine sanctuary, and it just doesn't belong there. So that's one of the things we're looking at with the Ocean Conservancy, and again, with the NFL, is maybe having a one-day event where we get a lot of volunteer divers to come out and help us clean up a harbor. You know, so we joke, you know, because, you know, ask me tomorrow and I'll tell you 3 other things. I mean, the good news is that our message is resonating. I think our story is attractive, not just to the scientific community, but to potential sponsors and corporations who want to, you know, give back not only to our veteran community, but to make a difference. So we're optimistic, and we've got, the last thing, and then I'll shut my cake hole on this question, is that we've got a plan in place to create a series of Force Blue outposts through dive shops around the country, whereby veterans and also down the road civilians will be able to come in and take a specialty course. And, you know, we just got our AAUS accreditation, so we'll be able to offer a course whereby people can become Force Blue assistant scientific divers and join us when we deploy. So that'll, you know, we're still a small 4-year-old organization, but our plans are really to, you know, expand this thing globally. I mean, that's what 10 years from now, I'd like to see a Force Blue Australia, Force Blue South Africa, you know, because the vets are out there. Gons will tell you, we've had special operations veterans who fit our criterion currently reach out from Brazil, Israel, Germany, Australia, South Africa, Israel. I mean, you know, there's no shortage of talent that wants to get involved in the fight.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where all of us as divers, we benefit from the oceans and conserving them. And so many years of, you know, all this different kinds of harmful fishing, just pollutions and all that stuff, you know, it's taken away from something that all of us, you know, really enjoy and want to enjoy in the future. I mean, I know there's a lot of people just in general travel to Florida just to go diving because one, warm water diving, you have the coral reefs, you know, if they're gone, that kind of impacts, you know, that the tourism and the diving industry there. Just a little quick intro onto how I found Force Blue was I was the account manager for Florida for DUI. One of my dive shops, which was closed during the COVID times or kind of closed, did this thing called Thrash Till You Splash campaign. And I was like, oh, I'm on that. I can do these challenges. So I got involved by doing that and putting together the videos and putting some sponsorship money of my own into this and having fun with it. I mean, it was, and then, yeah, some of those challenges, I was like, yeah, there's no way I'm doing that one with the, but I'll make it, I'll put up a good show. Anyways, so that's how I found it. You know, there's a lot of different ways. I assume that we can help contribute or participate in this. I mean, that's one way that I found.
Yep. No, I mean, we always, you know, obviously we're a 501c3, so we're always looking for, you know, donations. Any donation anyone can make. I mean, the good news is it goes directly because we are small. There's very little overhead. It goes directly to get guys like Gonzo out and in the water. But just beyond that, you know, just help us share the, you know, spread the word, right? Because it's like I've said, it's so important that we don't, you know, one of our guys, Roger Sparks, who's a highly decorated Air Force pararescueman, you saw in a couple of those videos, said, you know, 10 guys in Speedos. And yeah, our guys, a couple of these guys wear Speedos all the time, right? It's eye-opening. But his point was 10 guys in Speedos can't change the world. You know, we're up to 20 now, but 20 guys in Speedos can't change the world. But they can get enough people inspired that can change the world, right? And but the only way that happens is if people hear our story and people want to get involved with us. So if you're asking how people can help, that's what they can do.
Awesome. So a question was, when you're planting this coral, since the depths are relatively shallow, one of the, I guess, the technical question, why scuba and why not some sort of surface applied air source?
Yeah, Gon, do you want to tackle that?
For instance, like the 100 yards of hope, we were scattered about, you know, so you have the surface supplied, you have all of that going on, all the, you know, I don't say complications, but you add a lot more to it. Whereas if you're just scuba, you're doing about an hour at a time anyway. So you can, you know, because you're transferring all the equipment and everything. And we work with all the local dive shops. So it's not like we're going to come in to say that if we're going to go to San Diego, I'll pick up Coronado just because that's, you know, my stomping grounds there when I started. We're going to do a dive in Coronado. What we don't want to do is show up in the Coronado and say, hey, we're here and we're going to save the day. No, we engage with the local dive shops. A lot of times the air, some of the supplies is donated by those dive shops. So we appreciate that. So that's what we've kind of relied on is the scuba is on the tanks and things of that nature. And quite frankly, we just don't have the manpower or the capital to have surface supply. You know, our boats are chartered or donated. We have Fish and Wildlife, FWC, they support us. So since we are smaller, we just don't have that capability just yet. And quite frankly, I think a lot of people just enjoy scuba. You know, I mean, that's like I said, that's the first time I've done it since in the 90s when I went to Buds.
Yeah.
You know, I had never dove open circuit other than like a recall dive, which is like swimming a pool 2 times. You know, I mean, it's just, you know, so it's very enjoyable once you get used to the bubbles escaping because you're so used to diving a rebreather and you freak out if a bubble escapes. So, but yeah, so that's really what it is. It's just we just don't have the capabilities yet, and a lot of guys just really enjoy it.
Yeah, so there's a question for you, Gonzo, that since you're just answering that question. But anyways, before I ask the question, it's just kind of funny. You're talking about, oh, it's weird seeing bubbles. You know, I mean, remember the first time I went and dove Florida, which was my first warm water dive, and I've been diving a dry suit. You know, I'm already well into my dry suit diving night, and I went there and I didn't bring my dry suit, so I dove wet. And I remember the dive master on the boat, you know, they heard that this is my first warm water dive, and they're all excited. And I'm like, they're going, you're gonna love it. The water's so warm. And I'm like, okay. So I jump in the water and, you know, and I give my, you know, I'm okay. And they go, what do you think? How's the water? I'm like, I am wet. I mean, what is this thing? I'm wet.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
like, it was foreign to me. It's like going, ah.
Yeah.
But anyways, the question was to you was, since you're doing this now for fun or recreationally and not on a specific like military type mission, what's the most interesting thing you've seen or have done that you weren't expecting or didn't know about in the oceans? I mean, like something that was like surprised you that just went, wow, it's like, you know, I've been missing this part of it.
That's quite easy. Color. Most of my dives were at night, in the middle of the night, in water that you could barely see your hand in front of your face. So just taking in just the color, just the beauty and the color of the marine environment, whether it's the coral reefs, the fish, you know, all the marine life around me, everything. Really just taking that in, taking in the color, taking in everything, just the beauty. And of course, Florida, the visibility is, you know, wonderful. Whereas if you're diving Coronado or Newport, Rhode Island or Norway, this is what you see right here, you know? So yeah, so just taking in the color, taking it all in. I'm sure that most of you guys have been diving, you know, your rec dive for years. You've been able to enjoy that. So that I haven't. So that was one of the things that really just it still like really touches me, just how I felt that first dive.
Hey, Gons, you know, I was just thinking, tell the story of how the UDT teams were formed and why they were formed, because I think that is such an interesting, you know, full circle.
Sure. So some of you might know, maybe not, but in 1943, the original Frogmen were started right in Fort Pierce, Florida, because for amphibious landings, landings in the Pacific in particular. The landing craft would bottom out, and they thought that they were okay. They were on the shoreline, so the Higgins boats would drop down their front gates, and the Marines would run off, thinking that they were running onto the beach. Unfortunately, it was just maybe a sandbar or a coral reef. They'd take a few steps and then go down with all their gear on, and they were either drowning or struggling, you know, struggling to stay alive, cutting their gear off. And then, of course, we had D-Day, June 6, 1944. So that's when they said the forces said we need to have something. The Brits kind of had something like it, but the American forces said we need to have something. So a gentleman by the name of Draper Kaufman, who is the grandfather of the SEAL team, started basic training for SEALs right there in Fort Pierce, Florida, to blow coral reefs, either to get, you know, clear away or recce them, you know, go through and recce them, do a reconnaissance with soundings and see how deep it is and all the way up. 2 days before D-Day, the original Frogmen swam in, did the soundings all the way up to the beach, climbed up onto the beach, recce'd and, you know, drew pictures on their arms, and then came back and then gave those reports. And then, of course, D-Day went on to be a success. So then you come full circle. Here's this crazy old retired Master Chief right down the road in Miami helping repair Florida's coral reefs. So it's basically come full circle. So once again, it's pretty neat because I'm a huge history buff and I'm very big on our legacy. So the legacy of the SEAL teams of having to practice to remove coral reefs, coming full circle to caring for and helping repair for our coral reefs is pretty moving, and something once again that I enjoy is being a part of that legacy.
Oh,
Thank you, Jim, for reminding me.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, it's amazing how, nature, things will, if you give it a chance and you don't keep putting it down, it will recover. So in this case, you guys are giving it a boost up, so to speak, and then letting it naturally, hopefully, take and replenish itself, and have us humans kind of get out of the way from keep wrecking it type of thing.
Yeah. Unfortunately, when people ask us about, hey, what's something that what's the greatest threat to our coral reefs, the greatest threat to our marine environment, it's a cold splash of water that you're throwing in their face, and we'll say, hey, our fellow man. People who just, because you'll see trash on the streets or whatever. Okay, I see it, I pick it up. But people don't think that trash under the ocean, under the water line, plastic bottles, plastic straws, things like that, they'll just go, whether either by disregard or just accidentally goes over the side of a boat or through your beach party or something like that. And then it ends up impacting the marine life. So it's nice to see us coming full circle. And like you said, hopefully clearing all that stuff so nature can get back to caring for herself.
Yeah. So even like in San Diego, it's like every dive I go out, I'm always picking up some sort of piece of trash, and putting it in my pocket on my dry suit, just trying to clean up. It's always there. I mean, San Diego is a big tourist destination, and it's a hard message to tell people. It's like, the stuff that you're leaving on the beach, the tide changes and it will suck it back out into the ocean. They just don't get that. It's
it's interesting, Jack, too. I'll tell you, it's addictive. I mean, I've been diving for, what did I think, 35 years, right? And I won't do another dive. I can't, where I don't go out and do something, whether it's a marine debris cleanup or helping with coral restoration, or anything that anybody could do, any qualified diver could do. Because if I were to just go out and have a fun dive right now, I would feel, from just being around this team, I'd feel like, well, that was a waste. I could have done something. And I think if we can get more people kind of thinking the way you just said, like every dive, there's something I can do. I can take a picture of something, or I can record. I can get with an organization that's in my local area or wherever I'm traveling to. There's some kind of citizen science you can get involved in, and I think once you do, then it really becomes, it's what you want to do, so I would encourage everybody to do that as well if they can.
Yeah, even in San Diego, it's easy. There's, you can be part of the reef.org, which is they do fish counts, just keeping track of fish. You can take photos of the giant black sea bass, so they track where they've been. There's a lot of different things that, every recreational diver can do to help out with this whole thing.
Yep.
So DEMA is coming up this year in Las Vegas. Are you guys going to be there presenting at all?
I don't think we're going to be there this year. We went pre-pandemic. We went for like 2 years. We had a booth.
It was Florida.
Yeah, and then we went to one in Vegas. The last one in Vegas, I think it had a booth. But we found that if we do go, we're just better telling our story, like walking around and not having a booth. So we may be there. I think verdict's out, but we're not going to have a booth at DEMA this year. I think that was the decision that was made.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is one of the bigger shows, so it does move around. And of course, coming out of this pandemic thing, it's kind of put a lot of the different, companies in, do we go, do we not go, but the one thing that's great is that, people can get out and start diving, not just in the United States, which we've been doing, but I know Canada's been opening up, travel to other parts of the country are opening up. And it's nice to see other countries, places that, for example, Cozumel, they care about their reefs. They actually had closed down part of theirs just to give it a chance to, recover from, the tourists, showing up with all their sunscreen and whatever. So, even that's just a simple thing right there that people can do is look at the products that you're using before you go into the water. I mean, my hair stands up on its own, so I don't have to worry about product, but so it's just simple things.
Lucky you.
Oh yeah, sorry.
We're crying crocodile tears for you. Hair problems.
Yeah. So anyways, I really appreciate you guys doing this. This is great having you guys on. And I've been, promoting you guys when I can, just make people aware of this, what's going on. And at DUI, we're always about, obviously diving. We want to get people out there diving because, a lot of us at DUI are divers. We enjoy diving. We want to get out there and we don't want this stuff to disappear, right? Because it's part of our livelihood, but it's also part of what I love doing. I get out there and dive 3 to 4 times a week in our cold, bad visibility water. But sometimes it's awesome. I was in San Clemente Island last weekend, by the way, which is a military island. Visibility is really good there. And you find some interesting things sometimes out there that I have picked up, just kind of leftover things from obviously our military practicing. But it makes just this civilian going, wow, look, it's a 50 cal shell. It's an interesting find every once in a while. So, but I appreciate.
Just don't use a hammer to like.
No, they're already spent. Someone was doing a little target practice, I think, from one of the ships or boats. So, so when you guys come out to San Diego or Southern California, make sure that you hit us up, and I will try and get as many of the different dive clubs, dive shops, involved with whatever you guys are going to be working on. So I appreciate it.
That'd be awesome.
And anyways, if you have anything to say at the end here, we're just gonna wrap this up for this month.
Yeah, I just encourage everybody to again, go watch the film. We're really proud of it. We'd love to get, it's everybody's chance to be a film critic, right? So let us know what you think. You can send. I'm just Jim at forceblueteam.org is my my personal email. Gonzo's actually Steve at forceblueteam.org.
We need to change that.
Yeah. Let us know, watch the film, let us know what you think. And and check out our website. But that's it. But really, thank you, Jack. I appreciate the opportunity to, we always want to tell our stories. So thanks for giving us the platform.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, you're welcome. So, okay, so we have, I'm just gonna do a quick closing here just to let people know that, again, this is on Facebook Live. You can watch it instantly rewatch it once we end this session. It'll be available on the YouTube channel, which we link to from all the different websites and social media stuff. So it's viewable there, plus any of the past episodes. And just to give you guys or everyone a quick heads up on what's next month is next month is we're going to have Rocio Bunker from San Diego. I know it's easy getting San Diego people to speak. But she'll be talking about the San Diego Film Festival and showing some of that stuff. So that'll be interesting. And just a little quick sneak. Bernie Chowder of the Last Dive may be one of our hosts coming up in a few months. So if you haven't read that book, definitely go and do that because it's an awesome book, and that will be fun too. So thanks everyone for coming out. We'll see you next month. Again, it's on the first Thursday of each month at 1 p.m. Pacific time. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you, everybody.
And I have the information up right here. So you guys, if anyone wants to get the screen capture of this, here's the information where you can contact later on. Thanks.